Captain Marcus Blackwood had served the Crown for 15 years without a single breach of protocol. His uniform was always perfectly pressed, his boots polished to mirror brightness, and his expression remained stoic, regardless of the chaos around him. The palace walls had witnessed his unwavering dedication through state dinners, royal weddings, and even attempted assassinations. Nothing could shake his composure. Until today. The morning started like any other February 14th. Marcus stood at his post outside the Queen's private chambers, watching the endless stream of servants carrying red roses and heart-shaped chocolates throughout the corridors. Valentine's Day at the palace was always a spectacle of romance, but it held no meaning for him. Love was a luxury that royal guards couldn't afford. Lieutenant Sarah Chen approached his position with the usual morning briefings. She had joined his unit 3 years ago, fresh from military academy with determination burning in her dark eyes. Marcus had trained her personally, watching her transform from an eager recruit into one of the most reliable guards in the palace. Her dedication impressed him, though he would never admit it aloud. "Sir, there's been a change in today's schedule," Sarah reported, her voice crisp and professional. "The Queen has requested additional security for the Valentine's charity gala tonight. She's expecting several foreign dignitaries." Marcus nodded curtly, but something felt different today. Perhaps it was the way the morning sunlight caught the golden highlights in Sarah's carefully pinned hair, or how her usually stern expression seemed softer in the romantic atmosphere that filled the palace. He found himself studying her face longer than necessary, noticing details he had somehow missed during their years of working together. "Captain," Sarah's voice brought him back to reality. "Should I brief the evening shift about the additional protocols?" "Yes, of course," Marcus replied, clearing his throat and straightening his shoulders. He couldn't afford such distractions, especially not today when the palace would be filled with guests and potential security risks. As Sarah walked away, Marcus caught himself watching her confident stride down the marble hallway. This was dangerous territory for a man who had built his entire career on discipline and control. Royal guards were expected to be invisible, emotionless protectors who existed solely to serve the crown. Personal relationships, especially romantic ones, were strongly discouraged within the ranks. The morning progressed with its usual routine of security checks and patrol rotations. Marcus tried to focus on his duties, but his mind kept wandering to Sarah. He remembered the late nights they had spent together during security briefings, the way she laughed at his rare attempts at humor, and how she always brought him coffee exactly the way he liked it without being asked. During lunch break, Marcus found himself in the palace gardens, seeking solitude among the rose bushes. The gardeners had outdone themselves for Valentine's Day, creating elaborate displays of red and pink flowers that filled the air with sweet fragrance. He sat on a stone bench trying to understand these unfamiliar feelings that threatened to crack his carefully constructed emotional armor. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" A gentle voice interrupted his thoughts. Marcus looked up to see Queen Isabella approaching, her elegant presence commanding respect even in casual conversation. He immediately stood and bowed, but she gestured for him to remain seated. "Your Majesty, I was just taking a well-deserved break," she finished with a knowing smile. "Marcus, you've served my family faithfully for many years. Don't think I haven't noticed your dedication." The Queen sat beside him on the bench, an unprecedented gesture that would have shocked the palace staff. "Tell me, when was the last time you allowed yourself to simply be human? To feel something beyond duty and obligation?" Marcus struggled to find words. The Queen's question touched something deep within him, something he had buried beneath years of military training and professional responsibility. "Your Majesty, my personal feelings are irrelevant. My duty is to protect and serve." "Duty is important, Marcus, but so is the heart," Queen Isabella said softly. "I've watched you and Lieutenant Chen work together. There's something special there, something worth exploring." Before Marcus could protest, the Queen stood and prepared to leave. "Tonight's gala will be challenging, but don't let fear of feeling prevent you from living. Even royal guards deserve happiness." As the Queen walked away, Marcus sat in stunned silence. Her words echoed in his mind, challenging everything he believed about his role and his life. For the first time in 15 years, Captain Marcus Blackwood began to question whether duty and love could coexist, or if he would have to choose between the two. The afternoon security briefing took place in the main conference room, where a dozen guards gathered around a large mahogany table. Maps of the palace grounds were spread across the surface, marked with red pins indicating critical security points for the evening's Valentine's gala. Marcus stood at the head of the table, his usual commanding presence slightly shaken by his earlier conversation with the Queen. Tonight's event will host over 200 guests, including ambassadors from 12 different countries, Marcus began, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. We'll be operating with heightened security protocols. Sarah sat directly across from him, taking detailed notes as he outlined guard positions and communication procedures. Every few minutes their eyes would meet briefly before both would look away, an unspoken tension filling the space between them. The other guards seemed oblivious to this silent exchange, focused entirely on their assignments. Lieutenant Chen, Marcus said, struggling to keep his voice professional, you'll be stationed near the main ballroom entrance. Your familiarity with diplomatic protocols makes you ideal for greeting our international guests. Understood, sir, Sarah replied, though something flickered in her eyes that suggested she wanted to say more. As the briefing continued, Marcus found it increasingly difficult to concentrate. Every gesture Sarah made, from tucking a strand of hair behind her ear to the way she bit her lower lip while thinking, seemed magnified. He had spent 3 years training himself to see her only as a fellow soldier. But today that carefully constructed barrier was crumbling. After dismissing the other guards, Marcus lingered in the conference room, pretending to review the security plans. Sarah remained as well, organizing her papers with unusual slowness. Sir, she said hesitantly, is everything all right? You seem different today. Marcus looked up from the maps, meeting her concerned gaze. For a moment he considered telling her about his conversation with the Queen, about the feelings that were threatening to overwhelm his professional composure. Instead, he fell back on familiar patterns. Just focused on tonight's security concerns, he replied stiffly. The safety of our guests is paramount. Sarah nodded, but disappointment flashed across her face. She had hoped for something more, some acknowledgement of the connection they both felt but never discussed. As she gathered her papers to leave, Marcus felt a pang of regret. Sarah, he called out, using her first name without thinking. She turned back, surprise evident in her expression. Marcus rarely used first names during duty hours. Be careful tonight. These events can be unpredictable. I will, Marcus, she replied softly, allowing herself to use his given name in return. The sound of it on her lips sent an unexpected warmth through his chest. The hours before the gala passed slowly. Marcus conducted his usual security sweeps, checking every door, window, and entrance point. The palace staff worked frantically to prepare for the evening, hanging elaborate decorations and arranging thousands of red roses throughout the ballrooms. The air buzzed with excitement and romance, emotions that Marcus typically found irrelevant to his duties. As evening approached, guests began arriving in elegant carriages and luxury vehicles. Marcus watched from his command post as couples entered the palace, their faces glowing with happiness and love. Diplomats danced with their spouses, young nobles whispered sweet words to their partners, and even some of the palace staff stole romantic moments in quiet corridors. Through his earpiece, Marcus could hear regular check-ins from guards stationed throughout the building. Sarah's voice came through clearly every 15 minutes, reporting that her sector remained secure. Each time he heard her speak, that strange flutter in his chest returned. All clear at the main entrance. Sarah's voice crackled through the communication system. The Italian ambassador just arrived with his delegation. Copy that, Lieutenant Chen, Marcus responded, maintaining professional protocol even as his heart raced. As the night progressed, Marcus realized that something fundamental had shifted within him. Years of emotional suppression were giving way to feelings he had forgotten he was capable of experiencing. The Queen's words echoed in his mind. Even royal guards deserved happiness, but with these new emotions came uncertainty and fear. What if his feelings affected his judgment during a critical moment? What if Sarah didn't share his sentiments? What if pursuing romance meant compromising everything he had worked for? Standing alone in his command post, surrounded by monitors showing every corner of the palace, Marcus Blackwood faced the most challenging battle of his career. This time the enemy wasn't an external threat to the crown, but his own heart finally awakening after years of dormancy. The evening was still young, and already his carefully ordered world was beginning to transform in ways he never imagined possible. The grand ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and candles, creating an atmosphere of magical romance. Couples waltzed across the polished marble floor while musicians played soft melodies from the elevated stage. Marcus moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, his trained eyes scanning for potential threats while his mind remained distracted by thoughts of Sarah. From his position near the orchestra, he could see her stationed by the main entrance. She stood with perfect posture, greeting distinguished guests with professional courtesy while maintaining constant vigilance. Her dark hair was styled more elegantly than usual, and she wore the dress uniform that all female guards donned for formal events. Marcus found himself admitting that she looked absolutely stunning. Captain Blackwood to command post, his earpiece crackled with Sergeant Davies' voice. "We have a situation developing in the East Wing. Minor diplomatic incident between the French and German ambassadors. Nothing serious, but it requires your attention." Marcus sighed internally. Diplomatic squabbles were common at international events, usually involving protocol disputes or cultural misunderstandings. "On my way, Sergeant." As he made his way through the crowded ballroom, Marcus passed close to Sarah's position. Their eyes met briefly, and she gave him an almost imperceptible nod. In that split second of connection, something passed between them that transcended their professional relationship. It was a look of understanding, of shared responsibility, and perhaps something deeper. The diplomatic incident proved to be exactly what Marcus expected: two ambassadors arguing over seating arrangements at dinner. Years of experience had taught him to handle such situations with diplomatic tact and subtle authority. Within 15 minutes, both men were laughing over champagne, their disagreement forgotten. Returning to the ballroom, Marcus noticed increased activity near the main entrance. A late arrival was causing quite a stir among the guests. Through his earpiece, he heard Sarah's voice, slightly tense. "Command post, we have an unscheduled arrival. Prince Alessandro of Montenegro has arrived without prior notification. He's requesting immediate audience with Queen Isabella." Marcus frowned. Unscheduled royal visits were serious security concerns, especially during large events. He quickly made his way toward the entrance, weaving through clusters of dancing couples and chatting diplomats. When he reached Sarah's position, he found her engaged in polite but firm conversation with Prince Alessandro's security detail. The prince himself stood nearby, a tall, handsome man in his 30s with an air of casual confidence that suggested he was accustomed to getting his way. "Lieutenant Chen." "Status report," Marcus said quietly as he approached. Sarah turned to him with obvious relief. "Sir, Prince Alessandro arrived 20 minutes ago without advance notice. His security team insists he has urgent diplomatic business with Her Majesty, but his name isn't on tonight's guest list." Marcus studied the situation carefully. Prince Alessandro was known to be something of a playboy, famous for his romantic escapades across European high society. His sudden appearance at a Valentine's Day celebration seemed suspicious, especially given his reputation for dramatic gestures. "Your Highness," Marcus addressed the prince with appropriate respect. "I understand you wish to speak with Queen Isabella. However, protocol requires advance notice for security purposes." Prince Alessandro smiled charmingly. "Captain, surely you can understand that matters of the heart don't follow diplomatic schedules. I have traveled across Europe to make a very important declaration tonight." Marcus felt Sarah tense beside him. The prince's words suggested a romantic pursuit, which could complicate the evening significantly. Queen Isabella was a widow, and while she maintained friendly relations with many foreign royals, any romantic approach would require careful handling. "I appreciate your urgency, Your Highness," Marcus replied diplomatically, "but I must insist on following proper security protocols. If you'll allow me a moment to consult with Her Majesty's private secretary." As Marcus stepped aside to make the necessary communications, he noticed Sarah watching him with what appeared to be admiration. Her eyes reflected respect for his professional handling of a delicate situation, but there was something more personal there as well. The Queen's private secretary quickly confirmed that she would receive Prince Alessandro for a brief audience, but only after additional security measures were implemented. This meant reassigning several guards and creating a secure corridor between the ballroom and the Queen's private receiving room. "Sarah," Marcus said, forgetting formal protocols in the pressure of the moment, "I need you to coordinate with the security team upstairs. Make sure the route to the Queen's chambers is completely secure." "Of course," she replied, then hesitated. "Marcus, be careful with this one. Something about his timing doesn't feel right. Their eyes met, and in that moment Marcus realized that Sarah's concern wasn't just professional. She was worried about his safety, about him personally. The realization sent warmth spreading through his chest, even as the immediate security situation demanded his full attention. As Sarah hurried away to implement the new security measures, Marcus watched her go with a mixture of professional pride and personal longing. She was not only an excellent guard but someone who genuinely cared about him. The evening was proving to be far more complicated than he had anticipated, both professionally and personally. Prince Alessandro waited patiently, seemingly amused by the security preparations his unexpected arrival had necessitated, but Marcus's instincts, honed by years of protective service, suggested that tonight's romantic atmosphere might be concealing more serious intentions than a simple declaration of love. The Queen's private receiving room was a masterpiece of elegant simplicity, decorated with soft gold and cream colors that reflected her refined taste. Marcus positioned himself discreetly near the door while Queen Isabella sat gracefully in her favorite armchair, ready to receive Prince Alessandro's unexpected visit. When the prince entered, he carried himself with the confidence of nobility. But Marcus noticed something else in his demeanor, a nervous energy that suggested his visit involved more than simple romantic intentions. The Queen gestured for him to take the seat across from her, while Marcus maintained his watchful position. "Alessandro, what brings you to our Valentine celebration without warning?" Queen Isabella asked with gentle curiosity. Surely this could have waited for a proper diplomatic appointment. Prince Alessandro glanced briefly at Marcus before focusing on the Queen. "Your Majesty, I apologize for the improper timing, but I have news that couldn't wait. There have been developments in Montenegro that directly affect our alliance agreements with your kingdom." Marcus felt his senses sharpen. This wasn't the romantic declaration everyone had assumed. The prince's mention of alliance agreements suggested political urgency that could have serious implications for national security. "What kind of developments?" the Queen asked, her tone becoming more formal. "There's been a coup attempt in our government," Alessandro replied gravely. "My father managed to maintain control, but several ministers who were instrumental in our recent trade agreements have been arrested for treason. We need to discuss immediate adjustments to our diplomatic arrangements." Marcus processed this information quickly. A political crisis in Montenegro could destabilize the entire region, affecting multiple kingdoms that had treaty relationships. The timing of this revelation during a social event was highly unusual, but might be the only opportunity for private communication. Through his earpiece, Marcus heard Sarah's voice. "Captain, we have unusual activity in the palace communication systems. Someone appears to be monitoring radio frequencies from an external source." Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. If someone was intercepting their communications during a sensitive diplomatic discussion, the security implications were enormous. He caught the Queen's attention with a subtle hand signal that indicated potential surveillance threats. "Your Highness," Marcus interrupted carefully, "perhaps this conversation would be more appropriate in a more secure location?" Prince Alessandro looked puzzled by the suggestion, but Queen Isabella immediately understood the implications. Years of navigating international politics had taught her to recognize security concerns. "Of course, Captain Blackwood. Please escort Prince Alessandro to the secure communications room," she said, rising from her chair. "I'll join you there momentarily." As they moved through the palace corridors, Marcus used hand signals to communicate with his security team. The possibility of external surveillance required immediate protocol changes and a complete security sweep of the building. The romantic Valentine celebration was quickly transforming into a potential international incident. Sarah met them at the entrance to the secure communications room, her expression serious but controlled. "Sir, we've identified the source of the radio interference. There's a surveillance van parked approximately 2 blocks from the palace. Local police are investigating, but we should assume all standard communications have been compromised." Marcus nodded grimly. This confirmed his worst suspicions about the evening's developments. "How long have they been monitoring our frequencies?" "Unknown, but the interference began approximately 30 minutes ago, shortly after Prince Alessandro's arrival," Sarah replied. "We've switched to secure backup channels for all security communications." Prince Alessandro looked shocked by these revelations. "Captain, are you suggesting that someone followed me here?" That they're attempting to intercept my discussions with Queen Isabella? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Your Highness, Marcus replied. The question is whether this surveillance is connected to the political situation in Montenegro, or if it represents a separate threat to palace security. As they entered the secure room, Marcus realized that the evening had taken a dramatic turn from romantic celebration to international crisis management. But what struck him most was how seamlessly he and Sarah had worked together to handle the situation. Their professional partnership had deepened into something that transcended mere duty. They had become a team that anticipated each other's thoughts and actions. Queen Isabella joined them in the secure room, her demeanor now fully focused on the diplomatic crisis at hand. Alessandro, tell me everything about this coup attempt. Captain Blackwood, I want a complete security assessment of our current situation. As Marcus coordinated with his security team to implement enhanced protection protocols, he caught Sarah's eye across the room. Despite the serious circumstances, he saw something new in her expression, complete trust in his leadership and a personal connection that went far beyond professional respect. The Valentine's Day celebration continued in the ballroom below, but in the secure communications room, 4 people worked together to prevent what could become an international incident. Marcus found himself thinking that this crisis, serious as it was, had revealed something important about the relationships that truly mattered in his life. The night was far from over, and the challenges they faced were only beginning to unfold. The surveillance van was gone by the time local police arrived at the reported location, leaving behind only tire marks and the lingering questions about who had been monitoring the palace communications. Marcus stood in the secure communications room, coordinating with intelligence agencies while trying to piece together the evening's mysterious events. Prince Alessandro had provided detailed information about the Montenegro crisis, revealing that several European kingdoms were potentially affected by the political instability. The coup attempt had been orchestrated by ministers who opposed recent alliance agreements, making any diplomatic discussions extremely sensitive to external interference. Captain, Sarah's voice came through his secure earpiece. We've completed the full palace sweep. No additional surveillance devices were found, but we did discover something interesting in the guest parking area. Marcus stepped away from the diplomatic discussions to focus on Sarah's report. What did you find? A catering truck that wasn't scheduled for tonight's event. The driver claimed he was delivering last-minute floral arrangements, but his paperwork doesn't match our authorized vendor list. Security is detaining him for questioning. This new development added another layer of complexity to an already complicated evening. Marcus realized that what had begun as a simple Valentine celebration had become a sophisticated intelligence operation targeting sensitive diplomatic communications. I'm coming down to interview the driver myself, Marcus said. Maintain current security protocols and keep Prince Alessandro's presence confidential until we understand the full scope of this situation. As Marcus made his way through the palace corridors, he passed the ballroom where guests continued their romantic celebrations, completely unaware of the international drama unfolding above them. The contrast between the carefree dancing and the serious security crisis struck him as surreal. Sarah waited for him in the security office, where the detained catering driver sat nervously at a metal table. The man appeared to be in his 40s, with calloused hands and the weathered appearance of someone accustomed to physical labor. His story about delivering flowers seemed increasingly implausible under scrutiny. Mr. Henderson, Marcus said as he entered the interrogation room, I understand you were delivering flowers to tonight's event. Can you explain why your truck contained sophisticated radio equipment instead of floral arrangements? The man's composure cracked immediately. I don't know anything about radio equipment. I was just following orders to deliver the flowers to the kitchen entrance. Sarah stood beside Marcus, her presence adding authority to the questioning. Whose orders, Mr. Henderson? And why don't your delivery papers match our authorized vendor list? After 20 minutes of careful questioning, the truth finally emerged. Henderson had been hired by an unknown contact to position the surveillance equipment near the palace and monitor specific radio frequencies during the evening's event. He had no knowledge of the broader intelligence operation, but admitted that he was supposed to report any unusual communications to a cell phone number. Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances, both recognizing the professional nature of the surveillance operation. This wasn't the work of amateur criminals but of sophisticated intelligence operatives who had advanced knowledge of Prince Alessandro's visit and the sensitive nature of his diplomatic mission. "Sarah, we need to contact International Intelligence Services immediately," Marcus said as they left the interrogation room. "This operation appears to have been targeting Montenegro's diplomatic communications specifically." As they walked back toward the secure communications room, Sarah touched Marcus's arm gently. "You've handled this brilliantly tonight. Your instincts about the security threat were exactly right." Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. In the dim corridor lighting, her face looked beautiful and concerned. For the first time all evening, the immediate crisis seemed less important than the woman standing beside him. "Sarah, I need to tell you something," Marcus said, abandoning all pretense of professional protocol. "Tonight has made me realize that I've been fighting feelings that I should have acknowledged long ago." Sarah's eyes widened with surprise and hope. "Marcus, I've felt the same way for months, but I didn't think you were interested in anything beyond our professional partnership." Before either could say more, Marcus's earpiece crackled with urgent communication from the secure room. "Captain, we have a breakthrough in the Montenegro situation. Prince Alessandro has received confirmation that the coup attempt was backed by foreign intelligence services. Queen Isabella needs your immediate assessment of palace security measures." The moment of personal connection was interrupted by duty, but something fundamental had changed between them. As they hurried back to handle the continuing crisis, Marcus felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. The evening's events had forced him to confront not only external threats, but also his own emotional barriers. Sarah walked beside him with new confidence, their professional partnership now strengthened by acknowledged personal feelings. The Valentine's Day celebration that had seemed so irrelevant to Marcus's duties had become the catalyst for the most important personal revelation of his life. The crisis was far from resolved, but Marcus no longer faced it alone. He had a partner who understood him both professionally and personally, someone who shared his dedication to duty while offering the possibility of something deeper than mere cooperation. Dawn was breaking over the palace grounds as the last of the Valentine's Day guests departed, unaware of the international crisis that had been quietly resolved during their romantic celebration. Marcus stood on the main balcony overlooking the gardens, finally allowing himself a moment to process the extraordinary events of the past 12 hours. The intelligence operation had been successfully neutralized through cooperation between multiple international security agencies. Prince Alessandro's diplomatic mission had been completed successfully, with new alliance agreements secured despite the coup attempt in Montenegro. The surveillance team had been identified and arrested, preventing sensitive diplomatic information from being compromised. Queen Isabella had personally commended Marcus and his security team for their professional handling of the crisis. But more importantly, she had pulled him aside privately to express her satisfaction that he had finally allowed his heart to guide him toward personal happiness. "Captain," Sarah's voice interrupted his thoughts as she joined him on the balcony. She had changed from her formal uniform into casual clothes, her hair falling softly around her shoulders in the morning light. "The final security reports are completed," she continued, "and Prince Alessandro has departed safely from Montenegro. The palace is secure and returning to normal operations." Marcus turned to face her, seeing her not as Lieutenant Chen but as Sarah, the woman who had stood beside him through the most challenging night of his career. The professional crisis had stripped away all pretense and revealed what truly mattered in his life. "Sarah, last night changed everything for me," Marcus said quietly. "For 15 years I believed that duty and personal happiness couldn't coexist. You've shown me that I was wrong." Sarah stepped closer, her dark eyes reflecting the golden morning sunshine. "Marcus, I've admired your dedication and strength for years, but last night I saw something more. I saw a man who cares deeply about protecting others while being brave enough to protect his own heart." The palace gardens stretched below them, filled with the roses and decorations from the previous evening's celebration. The romantic atmosphere that Marcus had once found irrelevant now seemed to perfectly frame this moment of personal revelation. "I don't know how this works," Marcus admitted, taking Sarah's hands in his own. "I've never allowed myself to consider a relationship with another guard, let alone someone under my command. But I know that what I feel for you is stronger than any protocol or regulation." Sarah smiled, the expression transforming her usually serious face into something radiant. "We'll figure it out together." Queen Isabella has already mentioned that she's considering restructuring the security command to create co-equal leadership positions. She seems to think that two people who work so well together professionally might be even more effective as partners in every sense. Marcus felt a surge of gratitude toward the Queen, who had recognized the value of their partnership before they had acknowledged it themselves. The wisdom she had shared in the gardens the previous morning now made perfect sense. "So you're saying that the Queen has been playing matchmaker while managing an international crisis?" Marcus asked with genuine amusement. "Among her many talents, apparently," Sarah laughed, a sound that Marcus realized he wanted to hear every day for the rest of his life. As they stood together on the balcony, watching the sunrise paint the palace grounds in shades of gold and pink, Marcus reflected on the unexpected lessons of Valentine's Day. He had learned that true strength sometimes required vulnerability, that duty could coexist with love, and that the most important partnerships were built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. The other guards would arrive soon to begin the morning shift, and Marcus and Sarah would resume their professional responsibilities. But everything had changed between them, and everyone around them would eventually recognize that the palace security team had gained something invaluable. Two leaders whose personal bond strengthened rather than compromised their ability to protect others. "One more thing," Sarah said softly, reaching into her pocket. "I had this made weeks ago but never had the courage to give it to you." She placed a small object in Marcus's palm, a custom-made challenge coin bearing the palace crest on one side and an engraved message on the other. "To the bravest man I know, who finally found the courage to be human." Marcus looked at the coin, then at Sarah, feeling emotions he had suppressed for years finally finding their voice. "Sarah Chen, you are extraordinary in every possible way." Their first kiss happened naturally, surrounded by the romance that had filled the palace during the previous evening's celebration. It was gentle and tentative at first, then deeper as they realized that they no longer needed to hide their feelings from each other or from the world. When they finally separated, both were smiling with the joy of people who had discovered that love and duty could indeed coexist. The Valentine's Day that had begun, with Marcus questioning his ability to feel anything beyond professional obligation, had ended with him understanding that the greatest strength came from allowing others to see and share his true self. Captain Marcus Blackwood and Lieutenant Sarah Chen had lost their composure completely, but in doing so, they had found something far more valuable than perfect protocol. They had found each other, and a love that would strengthen every aspect of their service to the crown they had sworn to protect.